Hi, welcome to Spanish 101, and today we're going to be talking about the differences between saber and conocer, but for this video we're focusing on conocer. So here I have a conjugation table where we'll be able to see the differences in conjugations. What I want you to notice is how the yo form has a Z and a C right next to each other, and that's something that you need to be aware of. In my experience with the language in growing up in Mexico, that's one of those things that you actually have to memorize. Even writing for a native speaker can also be tricky, and this could be one of those grammar mistakes that everyone gets when it's growing up as a native speaker, or eventually if you don't keep reading or you don't practice a lot with your grammar, it's still one of those things that it's going to happen. So you have to be aware of that. But the rest are pretty straightforward. So, yo conozco, tú conoces, él, ella, usted conoce, nosotros, nosotras conocemos, vosotros conocéis, ellos, ellas, ustedes conocen. So again, memorization is a very important part of learning a language. So I would suggest to create flashcards or signing up for Serego or Memrise or even Quizlet. There are many different ways that you can make this happen. Perfect. So let's talk about the characteristics of conocer. So as you can see in this picture, conocer has to do a lot with being familiar with someone, with something, or with a place. And that's kind of like the main idea of conocer. And one of those characteristics is to know a person, someone that you already know, like a roommate, a friend, a relative, someone that you know. The next one is that we use this verb to actually describe when we meet someone. For example, when you say, I met my girlfriend 2 years ago, so that's when we're going to use conocer. Another one, to be acquainted, familiar with place or thing. So this is when you have visited a place. Let's say that last year you went to Spain. So in order to express that you're familiar with the place that you went to, you're familiar with the surroundings, how to move around, etc. You'll say that you're familiar, and you'll use the verb conocer. So let's talk about the first characteristic, to know a person. And what we're going to be introducing right now, it's what it's called a personal A. Personal A, it's a preposition that it's going to be used especially with conocer, and when we talk exclusively about someone, a person, or a pet. So that's the only time we're going to use that. And I'm going to show you how that looks really quick. So here, we're talking about to knowing a person. So I can say that I know the Spanish professor, so I would say something, yo conozco al professor. I'm familiar with the professor. That's basically what it's translating to. Or I know the professor. In both cases, you're expressing that you already know the person and you are acquainted with that person. But here, notice how we have this prepositions right here. And what happened is we're combining two prepositions. We're combining the preposition A, or the personal A, with the article. Yo conozco a el profesor. We know that articles go along with nouns. So instead of saying yo conozco a el profesor, we're combining them to form al. We talked about this, I believe, in previous videos. And if you're still not quite sure, you can Google it, or you can go into your book. And there's a specific chapter for personal A. I'm also going to be making a video about that you can check out later. But notice, and the important thing here to notice is whenever using conozco and talking about a person, you're always going to use a personal A. Another example could be, yo conozco a María. So here again, we have a personal A because we're talking about a person. And we don't have an article because we're talking about person. It's a proper noun, so we don't need an article like a, el, or al. So that's a very important thing to know. So I don't really want to go deep into personal A because there's another video for that. But this is just for you to show you that conocer, it's always going to require personal A. Okay, so let's go to the second characteristic, to meet a person. Like I gave you an example is, I met my girlfriend 2 years ago. So when you meet someone for the first time, that's the verb we're going to use, conocer. In this case, we're going to give the example in the past because usually when you meet someone, you can meet someone in the past. So for example, yo conocí al profesor. Yo conocí al profesor. So again, I met the professor, or I am familiar with the professor. So that could be the meaning, but here, since it's in the past, it basically, the exclusive meaning that it has is that you met the professor. If it's in the present, yo conozco, like we did before, yo conozco. So it means that you're familiar with the professor and that you also get to meet him. You know who he is. You've introduced yourself to him, and he introduced himself to you, etc. So there's more of a close relationship. It's not just a stranger anymore. Okay, and the last one is to be acquainted or familiar with a place or a thing. So, for example, if you have a friend that is traveling abroad, and let's say that he's traveling to China. I've been to China, so I'm a little bit familiar with that place, and he asks me for tips, advices, etc. So I can tell him, yo conozco Yo conozco un buen restaurante en Jinan. I know of a good place in Jinan. I'm familiar with a good place in Jinan. So here we're talking about a thing, we're talking about a restaurant that I'm familiar with because I've been to that place before. I've been to this city in China, Jinan, and I know how to move around. I can locate myself and, like go places, etc. So when we are familiar with a place or a thing, we are always going to be using the verb conocer. And notice how here we don't have a personal A. There's no personal A because we're talking about a thing. And personal A, like its name says, it's only going to be used for person or person or pets. So this is the other characteristic. Perfect. Okay, so I hope that this was a very good introduction for you and the characteristics of conocer. Remember there are 3, and most of them involve of you being acquainted or familiar with a person, a thing, or a place.